New Caledonian Crows. There's a specific moment researchers talk about when discussing this species, and it's the moment they realized these birds weren't just using tools, they were improving them. New Caledonian crows bend wire into hooks they've never seen before, fashion complex tools from leaves and twigs, and here's where it gets uncomfortable. They pass improved designs to the next generation. That's not instinct, that's cultural transmission. One crow in a lab bent a straight piece of wire into a hook to retrieve food from a tube, a tool design it had never encountered in its life. The researchers couldn't explain it as learned behavior because the bird invented the solution on the spot. What terrifies researchers is that this represents cultural evolution, the same process humans used to go from sharpened stones to smartphones, happening in a bird brain weighing less than 30 grams. And the part that keeps them up at night? If you remove the crow's access to metal wire and only give them natural materials, they'll adapt and create new tool types within days. They're not following a script. They're problem-solving in real time and teaching innovations to the next generation. The myth that tool use is instinctive gets shattered when you watch a crow teach its offspring a technique it invented last week. It's been doing this for thousands of years, which means these birds have their own technological evolution running parallel to ours. That's a line researchers thought separated humans from everything else. Coconut octopuses. An octopus has no bones, no rigid structure, and a brain distributed across its entire body, which makes the fact that it plans for future threats even more unsettling. Coconut octopuses collect coconut shell halves from the ocean floor, carry them awkwardly across open sand while exposed to predators, and reassemble them later as portable armor when danger appears. That's future planning. The octopus isn't reacting to an immediate threat. It's anticipating one that hasn't happened yet. Researchers watch these octopuses carry shells for over 60 feet while completely vulnerable. They're trading immediate safety for future protection. What terrifies researchers about this behavior is the cognitive leap required. The octopus has to understand that something might be useful later, even when it's a burden now. That's delayed gratification, and it requires a sense of time and consequence that was supposed to be uniquely human. One octopus was observed stacking 6 coconut shells and carrying the entire pile, which suggests they're planning for multiple scenarios. And this is coming from an invertebrate with a completely different brain structure than mammals. The line researchers thought separated complex cognition from simple reflexes keeps getting harder to defend when you watch an octopus make a decision that looks exactly like human strategic thinking. Bottlenose dolphins. Dolphins off the coast of Australia wear marine sponges on their beaks like protective gloves, and that alone would be interesting. But here's where researchers started losing sleep. Mothers don't teach all their offspring this technique. They select specific daughters, evaluate their aptitude, and pass the knowledge only to the ones they deem capable. That's selective teaching, and it requires the mother to assess another individual's ability to learn. What makes this tool use terrifying isn't the sponges themselves, it's the educational system around them. Dolphins have signature whistles, essentially individual names, and mothers use these names when teaching their selected students. They're calling students by name during lessons. That's not just communication, that's language being used in an educational context. Researchers documented dolphins using their signature whistles to identify themselves and even refer to other dolphins when they're not present. One dolphin will whistle another dolphin's signature to a third dolphin, which is functionally using a name in conversation. The teaching process can last over 5 years, with mothers correcting technique and demonstrating specific foraging methods. And the terrifying implication is this: if dolphins are evaluating students and teaching selectively, they're making judgments about intelligence and capability. The myth that dolphins teach all their young equally is wrong. They're selective, which means they understand that not everyone learns at the same rate. That's pedagogy, and researchers didn't think animals were capable of it. Capuchin monkeys. Researchers found stone tools in Brazil that date back 700 years, and the unsettling part is that they weren't made by humans. Capuchin monkeys have been using the same stone tool sites for centuries, smashing nuts with rocks using a specific technique that requires precision and force. The archaeological record shows tool refinement over time, with older tools being cruder and more recent tools showing improved efficiency. What terrifies researchers is that you can track technological progress in Capuchin tool sites the same way you track it in human archaeological digs. The technique involves selecting the right stone, positioning the nut correctly, and striking with enough force to crack the shell without destroying the edible part inside. But here's what made researchers reconsider everything. The monkeys modify their tools based on the hardness of the nut. Softer nuts get lighter stones. Harder nuts get heavier hammers. That's tool selection based on material properties, which requires understanding cause and effect at an abstract level. One group of Capuchins was observed using a three-stone system: an anvil stone, a hammer stone, and a stabilizer stone to keep the anvil from moving. That's a compound tool system, and it's the kind of thing archaeologists use to mark developmental milestones in early human history. The terrifying part is that if you erased the labels and just showed someone the tool sites, you couldn't immediately tell whether Capuchins or early humans made them. That line keeps getting harder to draw. Sea otters. An otter will use a rock as an anvil to crack open shellfish, and that's been known for decades. What researchers didn't expect was that otters have favorite rocks. Not random rocks, specific individual rocks they keep in skin pouches under their arms and carry with them for years, sometimes their entire lives. Some otters inherit their mother's favorite rock. That's emotional attachment to a tool, and it crosses a line researchers didn't think animals were capable of crossing. The otters don't just use any available rock. They select one based on weight, shape, and texture, then keep it. If they lose it, they'll search for it. One otter in captivity was observed becoming visibly distressed when its rock was removed, and didn't resume normal behavior until it was returned. What makes this terrifying for researchers is that the rock becomes part of the otter's identity. Researchers documented otters using the same rock for over 5 years, carrying it across miles of coastline, and refusing to use substitutes even when better options were available. And this is where it gets personal. If an otter can form an attachment to a rock, what separates that attachment from the way humans feel about heirlooms or keepsakes? The otter isn't just solving a problem, it's making a choice based on preference, history, and familiarity. The distinction between tool use and emotional connection to objects was supposed to be uniquely human. Otters didn't get that memo. Chimpanzees. Chimps don't just use sticks as tools, they fashion them into weapons. Researchers in Senegal documented chimpanzees sharpening sticks with their teeth, creating pointed wooden spears, and thrusting them into tree hollows to kill bush babies hiding inside. This isn't opportunistic tool use. It's weapon crafting with lethal intent. The chimps select a branch, strip it, sharpen one end, and then use it in a hunting strategy that requires understanding where the prey is hiding. But what terrifies researchers isn't the hunting, it's what happens during chimp warfare. Chimpanzees use tools as weapons against each other. During territorial conflicts, that's premeditated violence using crafted and collected weapons. The behavior mirrors early human warfare so closely that some researchers argue there's no cognitive difference, just a difference in scale. Chimps understand that a rock makes a fist more effective, and a sharpened stick extends their reach. That's applied physics in service of violence, and it's one of the behaviors that makes the gap between human and animal intelligence almost impossible to define. By the way, if you're finding this unsettling, I post content like this regularly. I'd appreciate if you subscribed. Thanks. Elephants. An elephant used a tree branch as a step stool, and researchers still don't know how it understood the concept without ever seeing it demonstrated. Elephants modify tools constantly, breaking branches to specific lengths, stripping bark to change texture, and adapting sticks for tasks they've never encountered before. One elephant in captivity figured out how to stack wooden boxes to reach fruit hanging from the ceiling, a problem that requires spatial reasoning and an understanding of weight distribution. The elephant didn't trial and error its way to the solution. It stacked the boxes correctly on the first attempt. That's abstract reasoning, and it suggests the elephant built a mental model of the problem before acting. What makes this tool use terrifying is that elephants in captivity demonstrate more innovation than elephants in the wild, which suggests they're even smarter than we observe in nature. When presented with novel problems, captive elephants invent solutions that wild elephants never need to. That means the cognitive capacity was always there, just waiting for the right circumstances to reveal it. The myth that animals only use tools instinctively collapses when you watch an elephant solve a problem it's never seen using a method it invented on the spot. And that line researchers keep trying to draw? Even by intelligence standards, elephants make it harder to justify. Gorillas. Researchers kept missing gorilla tool use because gorillas hide it. They stop using tools when they notice humans watching, which suggests they understand they're being observed and they'd prefer not to be. Camera traps finally revealed what researchers had been missing for decades. Gorillas use sticks to test water depth before crossing rivers, break branches to make walking sticks on uneven terrain, and fashion tools for foraging. But the behavior only shows up when humans aren't present. That's not shyness, that's deliberate concealment, and it requires a theory of mind. What makes this terrifying is that the gorilla has to understand that the researcher has a perspective, that the researcher is watching, and that its behavior will be observed. One gorilla was recorded using a branch as a bridge to cross a muddy patch, placing it carefully and then walking across. The moment a researcher approached, the gorilla abandoned the branch and crossed through the mud instead. Why? Because it didn't want to be seen using the tool. If gorillas are hiding behavior from us, what else are they doing that we don't know about? Researchers now believe gorilla intelligence has been systematically underestimated because the gorillas themselves have been actively preventing accurate observation. That's not just tool use, that's counterintelligence. And the fact that they're smart enough to know when to hide their intelligence makes the line between human and animal cognition almost meaningless. Pigs. A pig used a mirror to locate food it couldn't see directly, and that shattered assumptions about what cognitive skills are required for mirror self-recognition. Pigs pass mirror tests, meaning they understand the reflection is them, not another pig. But they also use mirrors strategically as tools. In lab settings, pigs were shown food hidden behind a barrier. They couldn't see the food directly, but they could see it in a mirror placed at an angle. The pigs looked at the mirror, processed the reflected image, and walked directly to the food's actual location without searching. That's using a tool, the mirror, to solve a spatial problem, and it requires understanding that the reflection represents real space from a different perspective. What makes this tool use terrifying is that pigs do all of this with a brain structure completely different from primates, yet they reach the same cognitive solutions. Pigs also manipulate objects with their snouts despite having no hands. They've been trained to use joysticks to control on-screen cursors, solve puzzle feeders that require multi-step sequences, and open complex latches. One pig figured out how to turn on a water faucet by nudging the handle upward. If pigs can use mirrors as tools and manipulate objects with the dexterity of a primate using its hands, the assumption that hands are required for advanced tool use falls apart. The terrifying part is that we've been eating an animal that can understand reflected space and use tools to manipulate its environment. Orangutans. An orangutan made gloves out of leaves to handle spiny fruit, and researchers realized the ape wasn't just protecting its hands, it was planning ahead. Orangutans in Sumatra fashion bundles of leaves into protective coverings before attempting to grab fruit covered in sharp spines. They don't make the gloves after getting hurt. They make them in advance, which means they understand the fruit will cause pain and they're taking preventative action. That's future planning, and it requires imagining a scenario that hasn't happened yet. But what makes this tool use terrifying goes beyond the gloves. Orangutans use sticks as toothpicks to remove food stuck between their teeth, and they've been observed using leaves with anti-inflammatory properties to treat wounds. One orangutan chewed a specific plant into a paste and applied it to an injury on its arm, a behavior that suggests knowledge of medicinal plants. The plant wasn't part of its normal diet, which means the orangutan selected it specifically for its healing properties. Researchers don't know if this knowledge is learned or discovered, but either answer is unsettling. If it's learned, orangutans have a medical tradition being passed down across generations. If it's discovered, they're experimenting with pharmacology. The terrifying implication is that orangutans have a form of medical knowledge and they're teaching it, which means they understand cause and effect in the context of health and injury. That's a cognitive leap researchers thought required human-level intelligence. Assassin bugs. An insect with a brain smaller than a pinhead uses corpses as tools, and it's one of the most cognitively complex hunting strategies ever documented in an invertebrate. The assassin bug kills ants, drains their bodies, and then places the hollow corpses on its back as camouflage and bait. It waves the dead ant to attract more ants, which approach thinking they're rescuing a nestmate. When they get close, the assassin bug strikes. It's corpse puppetry, and it requires multi-step planning, deception, and an understanding of prey psychology. The bug doesn't just use one corpse, it stacks them. Researchers observed assassin bugs carrying up to 8 ant corpses at once, layered on their backs like armor. What makes this tool use absolutely terrifying is what it implies about minimum cognitive requirements. The bug has to kill the ant without damaging the body too much, drain it completely so it's lightweight, position it correctly, and then manipulate it in a way that looks natural to living ants. That's tool use that requires understanding how another species perceives the world. The bug knows the ants will respond to the corpse, which means it has a model of ant behavior running in a brain that's barely a cluster of neurons. And here's where researchers stop trying to draw the line. If an insect can demonstrate tool use that involves planning, deception, and social manipulation, what does that say about the minimum cognitive requirements for intelligent behavior? The assassin bug shouldn't be capable of this. Its brain is too small, its nervous system too simple. But it is capable, which means intelligence doesn't scale the way we thought it did. And this is the one that made some researchers stop trying to draw the line at all. The gap between this bug and a human using tools isn't as wide as anyone wanted to believe. If this sparked your curiosity, consider subscribing so you don't miss future animal content. Thanks for watching.